Welcome back, y'all, and in this video we're going to be creating the DetailViewController and navigating over to it once we tap on one of the items in this table view. So to do that, let's go ahead and jump into the main storyboard. And real quick before we do that, one thing I noticed is that this title right here is saying Root View Controller. So let's go ahead and just click on that right here, and then in the inspector, let's go ahead and just change the title to Countries. That's going to just make it look a little bit nicer here. Okay, cool. So now that we've done that, what we're going to do is we're going to create a view controller. So let's go ahead and drag that in here. And then we're going to do one more new thing that we haven't seen before. Let's go ahead and grab this view controller right here, hold the control key, and drag to this view controller. And then we're going to do this show item right here. So what we just did is create a segue from one view controller to another. This is one way that we can navigate from one view controller to another. So to actually look at that segue, let's go ahead and click on the arrow, and we need to set an identifier for this segue. So what we're going to call this is table view to detail, just like that. And we're going to need this identifier here in a minute, but don't worry about it right now. So just set that, and then let's go ahead and configure what this view controller is actually going to look like. So let's add 3 labels to the screen. And let's add an image view to the screen. And then let's go ahead and constrain these. So for this top one, let's do 20-20-20. For this one, let's also do 20-20-20. For the third one, we're also going to do 20-20-20. And then for the image view, we're going to do 20-20-20. And for this one, though, we're going to click this aspect ratio button. And most flags are going to be an aspect ratio of 3:2. So let's go ahead and do that. It looks kind of square and boxy, but most flags, or a lot of flags, are actually like that. And the ones that aren't, we'll make sure that they aspect fit. So let's go ahead and click this top label right here. And just to kind of see what's going on, let's type name. For the second one, we will type population. And for the third one, we're going to type independence year. Okay, cool. Now that we have those, what we're going to need to do is create a class for this view controller. So let's go over here and let's create a new file. We can also do a Cocoa Touch class since this is one of those UI kit classes. And we're going to do UIViewController. And let's call this DetailViewController. Let's go ahead and create that. Cool. So now, like I said, this has got all that boilerplate code already, so we don't actually have to write any of this. But for this little comment right here, we're actually not going to need that. So one thing that we're going to need in order to populate this DetailViewController properly is we're going to need a country. We're going to need to pass in that country that we clicked on in the table view and let this DetailViewController know about it. So for now, let's just go ahead and create this placeholder country, and it's going to be of type country, and let's make it an optional because when this controller first gets initialized, we don't have anything to set it to. So let's go ahead and just make that nullable for now. So this is just going to be equal to nil. Now let's go back to the table view, and we can actually get rid of all of this right here, but don't get rid of this last little navigation part right here. Let's go ahead and leave this for now. We'll come back to this here in a minute. But there is one more function that we need to override. So we can see that we overrode the number of rows in section and the cell for row at. But the next thing that we need to also override, if we start typing table view, we need to override this did select row at. Make sure that you don't click did deselect row at. Make sure you're clicking did select row at. We're going to override that function right here. So this function is going to get called. Let's actually type it out. This function is going to get called when you tap on a row. I'm going to put that comment actually right above it. So we can override this function, which makes it really convenient to do something when a particular cell is tapped on or when a row is tapped on. And then this function is actually going to tell us what index path specifically was passed on. So in the same way that up here we know what cell it's asking for and we can determine the country based on the index path, we're going to do the same thing down here and we're going to pass that through to the DetailViewController. So the easy way that we're going to do this for now is we're going to say self.perform segue. And this is where we need that identifier that we created in the storyboard. And the identifier that we created was table view to detail. And for the sender, we can just put self. So this is going to perform that segue. And basically what performing a segue means is to navigate from one view controller to another. So we're going to perform that segue. And then here's the last little thing that we need to do. Let's go ahead and get rid of these top and bottom these comments right here. And we're going to override this function called prepare for segue. So basically what this is doing is this function is a part of every single view controller. You can override it in any view controller that you create. And we're basically just saying a segue is about to happen. What do you want me to do before I actually completely execute this segue? So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to say if let view controller equal segue dot destination. The destination is the view controller that we're trying to navigate to, and we're going to say segue dot destination as detail view controller. So out of the box, segue dot destination, if we start typing here, we can see that it's of type UI view controller, but we know, since we're doing the table view to detail segue, we know that this is going to be a detail view controller. And actually, let's go ahead and optionally cast this. That's what I meant to do. So we're going to want to optionally cast it to a detail view controller, because in this particular case, the only view controller that we're going to be going to is a detail view controller. But in other applications, there might be 2 or 3 different types of view controllers that you could be going to, and you might want to do different things with each. So if you were to ever copy and paste this code into another project, I want to make sure that you're not doing something potentially dangerous. So we want to optionally cast it to a detail view controller, and if it's successful, then we're going to say ViewController.country equals countries, and then we're going to do, for the index of the countries, we're going to say TableView.selected, or sorry, index path for selected row dot item. So real quick, that's actually an optional. So what we need to do, let's go ahead and cut that real quick. So we're going to say if let view controller equal the destination as a detail view controller, and then put a comma, and we're going to say also if let index equal that table view dot index path for selected row dot item, and we're going to pass that in. So we're going to say if we are going to this view controller and the index is available. So basically this property right here, we're just saying table view dot, and then we're getting the selected row that the user just tapped on. And then the dot item is obviously the row within that section. So then we're going to say ViewController.country equals the country at that particular index. And then now that we've done that, if we come into the detail view controller here and we just print country, let's go into the main storyboard here. And we need to actually make sure that this view controller right here is set to that type. So we created that detail view controller class. So we need to make sure that it's set to that class. Otherwise, that print statement wouldn't have actually worked because it wouldn't have been this particular class. So let's go ahead and run this one more time. And if we click on Italy, we should see here that it is printing that country to the console right here. And we see optional country, name Italy, population 60,360,000. So we're seeing everything that we need. So now the last thing that we need to do is actually just populate the data on screen based on that data. So let's do that real quick. Let's go to the main storyboard and let's open up the assistant editor. And we need to actually connect our IB outlets. So let's click on this name label here. Let's drag this over and we're going to say name label. And then we're also going to need the population label. Then we're going to need the independence year label. And then lastly, we're going to need the flag image view. Okay, cool. Now that we have that, we can come down here inside the viewDidLoad, and we can say, we could say if let country equal country, because we need to make sure that we can unwrap that first. And then we're going to say name label dot text equals country dot name. Population label dot text equals country dot population. And independence year label dot text equals country dot independence year. And actually, we need to add a little bit more than that. Let me open up the class here. So we actually need to interpolate these. You're probably thinking, what is this guy doing? Okay, so let's go ahead and do name just like that. So we need to interpolate the name just like that. So name and then the country name. And then for the population, we need to do the same thing as well as the independence year. So we're going to put population. Hopefully you're getting really used to interpolating strings at this point. You're probably starting to see all the use cases for doing this. And then we can say independence year. And then we can pass in that country's independence year. So if we run that, we're getting dangerously close to being done here. We click Argentina, we're seeing all that. Peru, we're seeing that. United States, we're seeing that, or whatever countries you have in here. So we're getting really close. The last thing that we really need to do is actually load the flag. So this part is a little bit tricky. This is a little bit unlike some of the stuff that you've seen before, but just follow along here and just write the code. So we're going to say if let URL equal URL and URL. And then we're going to pass in a string, and the string is going to be the country.flagImage URL. So we're going to optionally unwrap that, because when we initialize a URL, if that URL is invalid, then it will return null. So we need to null check that real quick. So if let URL equal that, and then we're going to say let data equal try data contents of URL. So real quick before we move on, what we're doing is we're checking to make sure that this URL is valid, and then we're also trying to get the data from that URL. So this might be new syntax for you here. You might not have seen this before, this try question mark. Basically what this is saying is it's just going to try to get the data from that URL, and by putting this question mark, we're just saying if you can't get the data from that URL, then just pass back null, which would therefore not pass under this null check here. So we're just making sure that the URL is valid, and we're also making sure that we can get the data from that URL. So then inside here, we're going to say if let image equal UIImage, and we're going to initialize that image from that data object that we got. And if that works, then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to say dispatch queue dot main dot async, and we're going to say self.flagImageView.image equals the image that we get back from here. So this is a lot to take in. This is the basic way that you actually load an image. So one thing, just to be fully transparent here, one thing that you might have seen me doing in this video is kind of looking over here at this monitor. The reason that I did that is because I have this code up on, I actually Googled this beforehand to make sure that I've got the right syntax here. This is really normal to say like, oh, how was it that we actually loaded an image? I need to go look that up real quick. But then once you see it, hopefully it starts to make sense. Some of this might be a little bit new to you, but hopefully this makes sense. We're making sure that we can get the URL and that it's valid. We're trying to get the data from that URL. If we can do that, then we're going to try to create an image from that data. And then all that this dispatch queue.main.async does right here is it returns things. It ensures that things are back on the main thread or the main processing core of the application. Don't really worry about why we're doing this right now. This is just to ensure that we don't get a crash. So we'll use this later on in an iOS application. We can make use of many different cores in an application. This is just one particular way of making sure that we go back to the main core so that we don't get any crashing when we actually try to load that image. So as long as you've got this code here, that's all that we really need to worry about. This is how you load an image. So if we run that, and we come back here, we're going to start to see the flags of these countries. And the last thing that we actually need to do is, before we load the name here, we can say title equals country.name. And this is just setting the title of the view controller. The title is a property that's built into the UI view controller class. And by setting the title, we get this really cool effect up here where it says Italy or whatever country we tapped on at the very top. So that kind of wraps up this application. As always, in the next video, we're going to just do some final thoughts and some recap, and we'll go from there. See you in the next